With RuneScape 3 leaks finally getting announced at this last RuneFest, guys, I'll be honest with you, I haven't been able to stop thinking about it. To say I'm hyped about it would be an understatement, as I have already started prepping for it in regards to work and letting my wife know that, you know, for like a month, I just want to exist outside of my basement, and she just may or may not have a husband for a month. Some people share my excitement, and some people don't even know what Leagues means for RuneScape. So I am here to fill you in on what Leagues could look like for RuneScape 3. I will be putting in some crazy hours during Leagues in the weeks prior to Leagues, so if that interests you, subscribe, as Leagues is truly my bread and butter. But know that we probably won't get any more information until probably September or October, and the Leagues is going to be running probably from November till the start of next year. First off, Leagues is a temporary game mode that runs for typically 2 months. Everyone starts from scratch as an Iron Man, and put simply, you play RuneScape on crack. This is the single best way to explain it, as it is a game mode that originated in Oldschool Runescape, and it is not to be confused with Deadman mode, the PvP-oriented game mode that Oldschool RS also has. It is a separate server hosted on several worlds that you can just hop onto, that you can play on any account that you have as long as it has membership, but these accounts' progress does not roll over in the main game at all, like Fresh Start Worlds would have. There's no economy balance round and no long-term health of the game to worry about, just fun. As someone who has spent well over 1,000 hours doing Oldschool RS Leagues and finished the highest rank for the last 4 leagues, I can honestly say it is the best way to experience RuneScape. The gameplay loop of Leagues is about completing tasks to get points, and those points can be used to completely change how you play the game. These tasks could range anywhere from super easy tasks like thieving a man in Lumbridge, to killing a boss for the first time, to wearing a full set of bandos, to even maxing. As you get more and more points, you will be able to unlock better and better buffs, such as XP rates that can range from anywhere from 5 times the XP rates to 16 times the XP rates, along with double resources while skilling, boss drops and rare items for relics, and so much more. Relics are one of the 2 most important things that makes Leagues Leagues. Relics are these powerful buffs. For example, in previous Leagues we had Treasure Arbiter, which makes clues insanely more common, and every clue has the lowest number of stats possible, while also having max amount of rewards possible and a few other quality of lives. We had another one called Production Master Relic, where you would smith, fletch, make potions, cook food, and craft a whole inventory at a single time. And if you are more of a PVMer, you could get a Slayer Relic, which could grant being able to pick a task every single time, unlocks all Slayer perks for free, and massively increase your Slayer experience an hour. And what really makes it interesting is if you were giving those 3 as an option, you could only pick one, which vastly changes your experience on Leagues compared to someone else who may have made a different choice. It makes you really think about what your goals are and the content you want to experience, or what content you really don't want to do, and maybe you boost those skills to make it more enjoyable. The other important thing that really makes Leagues Leagues is restrictions. Leagues on Oldschool have had 3 forms of restrictions, but the one that stuck is region restrictions, where you start off with a region such as Misthalin, which is Lumbridge, Varrock, and then you get Karamja, and you only unlock more areas by completing tasks. But there was a catch. A maximum of 3 additional regions could be unlocked, causing really hard decisions based on your goals and playstyles, and making everyone's journey unique, fun, and has lots of replayability. Throw in some auto-completed quests, some rewards for playing, and an amazing community, and bam, you got Leagues. So how would Leagues translate to RuneScape 3, and take into account that RuneScape 3 has less than a year to put together what Oldschool RS has been doing for over 4 years? The basic stuff like drop rate and XP increases as you progress is going to be the easy part, and I hope they have the approach of just copying and pasting a lot of what Old School RS already has, because it worked and has a proven track record, and adjusted to RS3 as needed will work really well. What I think the hardest part for the RS3 team is going to be the following, and not in any specific order. We have relics, restrictions, tasks, clues, and combat masteries. And when I say hard for the RuneScape team developing it, I also mean what I am most worried about them messing up. These are each incredibly fundamental to leagues in some way that just one being implemented incorrectly will cause issues for your whole experience. Let me dive deeper into each one. A lot of the relics from old school RuneScape leagues, I feel they can just copy and paste and change slightly to adapt to RS3 for content that just straight up doesn't exist in old school. So let's take a look at the tier 1 relics from this past leagues, for example. Starting off, we had passes such as 5 times XP, double drop rate for specific items from bosses and other rare drops, increased farming ticks, so farming was faster, minigames being boosted significantly, and many changes related to clue scrolls around them being stackable, and you keep your clue step progression between clues, and you only get clues that are in your region, along with run energy that is never drained while running. For RuneScape 3, a lot of these are great, with maybe a few additions that have to be made to RuneScape 3. Farming ticks, for example, would also need to apply to things like player-owned farms. Run energy never draining is a great start, but RS3 doesn't quite have the exact same problems that Old School has related to run energy. But I think a really good change would be also including maybe 50% cooldown on mobile abilities such as Surge and Bladed Dive, as it would just really make moving around the world fun. And also if it's stacked with mobile, I just think that'd be hilarious. Now for the actual relic choices. Power Miner, for example, granted the best in slot pickaxe, which for them is the crystal pickaxe, but for RuneScape 3 would have to have a pickaxe of life and death equivalent, alongside with it being augmentable. Benefits of the pickaxe would also have to be switched for the mining and smithing rework that happened in RS3, as Old School RS has the legacy mining where you could fail to mine and rocks depleted. As RuneScape 3 does not have those mechanics, we would probably want to lean more into critical strike damage and critical strike chance, and then maybe even unlimited stamina. The rest of the buffs I think would work great, where we have automatic banking for ores, auto smithing of bars from those ores, and automatically cutting gems granting XP for all of those activities. Next up, we have the Lumberjack ore. The wood cutting relic would probably require the least amount of changes, while also probably ending up being the least picked, which is fine. Someone always has to take the L when it comes to a selection. There's always going to be one that gets picked the least. This would require a similar change as the mining one, where we would want to have a tier 100 hatchet, which would have to be augmentable. The automatic burning of logs for this is why I feel this would probably fall flat, because we already have options for this in RS3 with like the ADZ effect. The auto fletching of logs into arrow shafts I think is okay, but I think this one specifically has more room to be expanded to maybe include something like planks for construction. And lastly, in the tier 1, we have the Animal Wrangler. It granted a really good harpoon. For RS3, it'd probably translate really well, as we don't have these amazing fishing devices, so this would be damn near best in slot as well, but maybe need to be amped up a little bit to accommodate for like the Tavia's fishing rod. Everything else on the fishing side could stay the same, honestly, where it automatically can cook your food, granting you the XP regardless of your level requirements. Attempting to fish one tick faster is incredibly busted, but all those are really solid. On the hunter side though, Chinchampas specifically would have to be adjusted slightly, I feel like, where we also have skill champas, and I think a great addition to this relic would be something like reduced chance to use the skill champas when you use them on throw. So I think that would be great, and there also could be something added around big game hunter to fit the theme of this relic. Examples such as granting triple spawns or massively increasing the chance of them in big game hunter, as we do have big game hunter and RuneScape 3, and that's a pretty big part of hunter. Now, those 3 relics are focused on gathering skills, which RS3 actually have 2 more of in the form of divination and archaeology. There are a few ways to address this, maybe comboing divination with something like lumberjack and rename it to divine lumberjack, where you could get increased energies and automatically doing your whole inventory when turning in your energies into the rift, like a built-in divine conversion relic, while also granting a few other buffs. Archaeology could be comboed with power miner, and it could be something called Earthworker or something, for example. And some example effects for this could also be automatically repairing all gathered artifacts, granting you XP on that action as well. And then you could also do, or in combination with this, double resources in general. So it could be double resources, double artifacts, or repairing artifacts automatically. I think those would be a great way to introduce those 2 skills. Now, some relics would require no changes at all, such as the Banker's Note relic. This item allowed players to know and unknow items at will, allowing you to tackle something like the fight caves or the Zuck fight with literally unlimited supplies. As long as you already had them, you could just note them and unnote them at will, and it was amazing. I love this relic. This one would require no changes and would still be good in RS3. When I was going through all of the relics, I was really trying to find ones that just straight up would not work or just would not translate well. And one specifically I spent a lot of time on thinking about, and that was a Specialist relic. Specialist relic really surrounded special attacks and spec energy, which RS3 doesn't have. Technically, we have special attacks, but we don't have spec energy. But if we just switched out energy with adrenaline, I think we'd have a really banger relic if we also maybe added some other things to this relic. An example of this would be, what if we got a very special EOF item that was like a higher tier EOF, and it allowed you to put in any item into it and take any item out of it. So you could just move specials in and out of this weapon. It would allow this relic to have more of an RS3 twist and bring a lot more value to this. I think it would make this relic really, really good. There are also other relics that would work exactly how they are, but they require other changes outside of the relic to work correctly, such as Golden God. Golden God allowed you infinite money, essentially, where you could buy anything from any shop for free. This for RS3 would work, but we would require like a few different changes. The same change that Old School had early on in Leagues was unlimited stock within a shop, so you could just infinitely just buy something over and over and over again. Now, for some relics, maybe we shouldn't just copy and paste them over, because they were, in my opinion, and based on how many people took it, were bad. Looking at Pocket Kingdom specifically, as I am only aware of a few people that actually took this relic, and I don't know anyone that actually didn't regret it by the end of the leagues. And lastly, some relics got all their value based off of the restrictions of the league. If we are region locked, a relic like the Grimoire was, which allowed you to swap to any spell book and lock all prayers, has more value, as it could be the only way for you to access and unlock some of those spells, such as Lunar Book or Ancients, which Lunar was locked off of the Frimric area in Ancients, obviously in the desert. Which gets me into the next topic, restrictions. Restrictions could be another really big challenge. Typical restrictions in past leagues, as mentioned before, was area locking things. There are a few issues with how this would translate to RS3. Example of this is Invention, where currently it's only really possible to start the skill at the Invention Guild, which is north of Falador. Easy solution is just unlock the tutorial for everyone, but this would have its own issues with maybe an old School RS player trying to learn RS3 Invention for the first time. Another one would be Dungeoneering. Where does that reside? Is it Wilderness, or is it just given to all players? There's going to be a lot of like small choices like that. Archaeology is also pretty complicated. Well, you know that whole next area you just unlocked? Well, that might be a little rough if you can't access it, which could lock you out of some really nice archaeology buffs. Honestly, archaeology without doing a deep dive into it so far could be completely fine with some good planning, or you might get a few gotchas for being locked out of nice archaeology relics because you just can't finish a collection for X, Y, and Z reasons. Necromancy is actually a pretty interesting one as well to think about, as the whole skill is unlocked in the city of which in itself could be its own unlocked area, which could be interesting twist, or it's included with the Mistlin area as it is accessed through Draenor. I think just how much content is in City of there's an argument where it could be its own region, but the con of this would be, how do you max if you don't have necromancy? So that's kind of where it comes up. I imagine this is just going to be something that's accessible for everyone, but that's a lot of content inside Draenor. And I could do a deep dive into resource locations for skills, like will you have access to Bay Knight? How about incandescent energy? This is the part I love about leagues, is valuing all the pros and cons for just skills. And then we have the whole bossing side of things. More so than Old School RS, I feel RS3 bosses are significantly more condensed regionally. Example is between Mistlin, Asgardia, and the desert, you're getting 80% of the bosses worth doing. And the starting area for RS3 will either be Asgardia, because you start in Birthrope as a RS3 player, or Mistlin for Lumbridge, which will be auto-unlocked. With Mistlin, for example, you will have access to all the Elder God Wars, so that's Archglacior for tier 95 dual wields, Kirapak for Fractured Staff of Armadyl, Zuck for the Suck Sword, and then Zamrock Elite Dungeons for the Bow of the Last Guardian. This is already all but one legendary weapon currently, with the last one being from Sanctum Rebirth, which could also be unlocked inside the city of which could be unlocked Mistlin, making all current best in slot weapons available right off the start from one region. Now, that might make some people think, why would I go to some other regions? And this is where I bring up Echo Bosses. Echo Bosses are leveled up versions of current bosses released in the last Old School RS leagues. They provided a very unique take on bosses, being in most cases more challenging. They were targeting difficulty levels more suited to the power level that players obtained during leagues. They're very fun and rewarding, as Echo Bosses dropped extremely overpowered gear. These overpowered equipment were, in a lot of cases, the new best in slot equipment. Using Echo DKs as an example, Friminik always kind of struggled for its place in leagues, as DKs drops rings and the Dragon Hatchet, but not much else. But with the Echo DKs dropping an extremely powerful necklace and ring, it completely changed the outlook of that region. When I say extremely powerful necklace and ring, to put this in RS3 terms, it'd be like going from the EOF to an EOF with 3 times the base stats, throw in 10% damage reduction, and a plus 15 prayer bonus. And then for the ring, imagine all the best rings we currently have. So all the Rex Matriarchs rings combined into one ring, and then triple the stats of that. Oh, and also with a huge prayer bonus. And Echo DKs was a very enjoyable boss in my opinion to get down. It was very fast paced and punished you for mess ups, forcing you to fight all 3 at the same time, as they all shared the same health pool, while switching prayers to not get bonked instantly. While they also pray against you, and the last bit of the kill, you are running around trying to finish off the kill as poison is getting spread everywhere. I could go on a bit about restrictions, and it is a really fun and complicated topic, but there is also a different type of restriction that was done in the third league's Shattered Relics. In this league, you had access to the whole map, but instead you had to unlock skills, bosses, and quests with your points, as opposed to areas. This league is still favorite to some people, though the minority, as it allows you to experience all the content with enough time as opposed to creating alts to go to different regions. I think both types of restrictions, both area locked or skill and bosses locked, are very solid options, with both having pros and cons. Personally, with time constraints, I think doing more of what Shattered Relics did would be safer, as balancing around all the regions I think will take some really creative solutions like echo bosses, requiring a lot more developer time, but I'm fine with either. I think opening up the whole world of RS3 to new players has a lot of data points I think would be good and might be a little bit more opening to people, but both are very, very fun. And I lean towards long-term area lock being the safer, but area lock also requires a lot more work around balancing tasks, which then gets us into the next topic. Tasks are going to be the single most important problem to solve for RuneScape 3. It will require damn near perfect implementation, and is the core of the game mode. The reason why I say it has to be damn near perfect is even with how many times Oldschool Runescape has done leagues, it hasn't been perfect. But Oldschool has amazing plugins that fix any of the issues that normal implementation had that were severely lacking for quality of life. Example is WikiSync, and RuneLite allowed you to sync your tasks to the wiki and also accumulate a bunch of data from all the users to see what tasks were completed the most, which really helped give direction to players. It also gave you some way to view and plan tasks that were just not inside the client itself, which allowed better multitasking. RuneScape 3 has no real options for the community to solve these poor implementation details and solve quality of life needed. For tasks to be successful, it has to reach a lot of acceptance criteria as well. It starts off with a good interface to look at tasks, search those tasks, and filter tasks down on specific conditions such as region, tier of task, specific bosses, etc. This is something Oldschool improved over time, but still missed the mark every time in my opinion. We will also need a list of tasks, obviously, ranging historically from 5 different levels: easy, medium, hard, elite, and master. A lot of task and direction can be copied from Oldschool RuneScape, but also we have 10 years of content to add tasks around. Example of how this might look in RS3 is using Dungeoneering as an example, as that's content that only exists in RuneScape 3. An easy task would be complete your first frozen floor. A medium task could be completing the first abandoned floor. A hard task would be completing your first occult, elite completing your first warped, and master completing something like floor 60 under 10 minutes, or something along those lines. Which gets me into another requirement of tasks, which is balancing points around tasks, as there's a lot of factors to consider. If we go down the path of region restrictions, all regions need to be close and competitive in points available at all levels of difficulty, which includes adding a lot of tasks to small parts of the game, which maybe not everyone has even interacted with. This can be actually super fun if done correctly. Example is Oldschool had a task of putting a wizard hat on a hat stand in some random old man's house. Like, no normal person has ever done that prior to leagues. RuneScape 3, we could have equivalent of those like super easy odd tasks like cooking a shrimp on the rock in Edgeville. But also, we need to make sure all regions have some really, really high points, like equipping a Telos weapon, and then you need to fill in all the gaps between those two. I imagine this requiring a lot, and I mean truly a lot of manual work, as we could easily have upwards to 2,000 tasks possible that need to be worked on for RS3. RS3 isn't quite starting from scratch in this aspect though, as we do already have a bunch of achievements associated with rune score, which are like little tasks in a lot of ways, and honestly is a fantastic starting spot as there are nearly 4,000 achievements to pick from, with 9 categories, 162 subcategories, and 42 subcategories, all tucked away in this terribly designed UI. Jagex, please don't put the task in here, please. Clues will always be a key part of RuneScape 3, and I expect leagues to be no different. I expect you to get them quickly and have an option to do them lightning fast, but they do have some complications. A problem that was incredibly prevalent in past leagues was not being able to complete clues due to region locked related issues. Example would be asking you to go to a location you physically couldn't get to, or requiring an item you couldn't get. Ideally, clues are always 100% achievable in your unlocked regions, so for example, if you started off, you shouldn't get a clue that required you to do a scan clue in Minifos. This also requires a lot of manual work, similar to tasks, going through each clue step one by one and identifying these complications. I haven't covered Combat Masteries yet, as they were only introduced in the most recent old school leagues, but they were extremely well received. Combat Masteries are a new system that provides combat boosts independent of relics. I'd love to see something similar added to RuneScape 3 leagues, so I want to explain how they worked. Masteries were completely separate from relics and had 3 main components. The first was a series of tasks you had to complete in order to unlock each mastery. In old school RuneScape, these tasks included objectives like defeat a giant, defeat 10 monsters over level 100 combat, defeat Scurious, which is roughly the equivalent to an Archglacior in normal mode in RuneScape 3, defeat a Slayer monster requiring 55 plus Slayer, defeat Jad, reach 100 combat level, defeat Echo Bosses, which, if RS3 doesn't receive Echo Bosses, a comparable task would be defeating anything from Elder God Wars bosses to Zamrock, and then defeat Zuck. Each of these tasks served as a progression milestone, and completing them unlocked powerful combat bonuses through the Mastery system. Only requirement for these tasks really is that they have to be completable by every person, regardless of the region selection. The second and third components of Combat Masteries are unlocked from using the Mastery points. You could choose a combat style to put points into, and each point into a tier would also unlock a passive. Running through what I did for melee, for example, the first tier gave melee hits a 25% chance to roll damage twice and taking the highest hit. And the passive gave 95% chance to save weapon charges, ammunition, and runes. Tier 2, melee hits have a 10% chance to generate an echo hit, which was an additional hit that did 50% max hit and respected accuracy, and the passive gave 20% healing from all sources. Tier 3, the melee attack rate of weapons was set to 80% of its initial baseline, rounding down, and the passive was all styles had a 100% accuracy. Tier 4, melee hits have a 5% chance to heal for 40% of the damage dealt, and the passive reduced all damage taken by 15%. Tier 5 melee attack rate was set to 50% of its original attack speed, rounded down for 5-tick weapons and above, and rounded up for 4-tick weapons and below, with a passive of prayer points gained from all sources increased by 25%. Tier 6, your chance to generate an echo has increased to 20% chance, and your echoes can generate additional echoes up to 8 times in a row, with a passive of attacks now has 60% prayer penetration. Out of all of these, of the melee specific could work in some capacity with changes to RS3, but Tier 3 and Tier 5, where it's based on the attack speed, wouldn't really transfer over the best, which sadly is one of my favorite changes to the gameplay for melee, where it made weapons that were maybe not the greatest DPS in the game now magically the best in slots. They were best in slot and fun to use. Darok specifically was just fun, but due to the fact that all abilities cast in a 3-tick system, it's not as transferable to RuneScape 3, and I don't want abilities to be able to be cast faster because that doesn't sound fun for my wrist. I would rather see increased damage for X type of weapon. The only passive that wouldn't be the most useful for RuneScape 3 is the 60% prayer penetration. The only way this would be useful is if we had more league-specific bosses that use protection prayers. Alternatively, we could get something for summoning, like all familiars do triple damage. RS3 does also have an extra combat style, Necromancy, which would also have to have ideas brought forward for the combat masteries. But outside of that, combat masteries are truly what makes you feel cracked out of your mind when you're PVMing in leagues. Assuming they don't put these back into relics, which is what they were prior to the last leagues, which I believe would be a mistake, as I really enjoyed the goal of killing specific monsters or doing specific things to unlock my next power up, essentially. And that was a really fun process. More so, like, if you're someone that hasn't done a specific content and that's listed as one of the goals, it really does give you that extra reason to go out and try something you haven't done before, like Zuck. If you've never done Zuck before and it's a task on here, you're much more likely to go out of your way to try and do something for the first time, which is what Leagues is all about, is trying to do something you haven't done before or experiencing RuneScape in a way you've never done as well. So I just think it just really adds to that element of Leagues, which is go out, try something, do something, because it feels a lot more rewarding to do it. And that's just scratching the surface of what RuneScape 3 Leagues could be. We're talking about a game mode that has the potential to be the most fun, most replayable, and most theory craft heavy content RS3 has ever seen, if it's done right. From relics to restrictions, from echo bosses to combat masteries, there's so much potential for RuneScape 3 to take what Oldschool Runescape built and turn it up to 11 with its own systems and style. This is the kind of content that makes you rethink how you play RuneScape. The kind of content that has you up till 3 AM doing clue scrolls because you're 1 point away from unlocking your next relic. The kind of content where a single region unlock or relic choice can completely change your entire path. So rather you're a long time RuneScape 3 vet like me, or an old school Leagues addict also like me, or just curious what the hype is all about, get excited. Leagues are coming. I'll be here every step of the way to break it all down, theory craft the best setups, and help you absolutely dominate when it launches. If that sounds like your jam, hit the subscribe button, drop a like, and let me know in the comments what kind of relics, restrictions, or bosses you want to see in RS3 Leagues. Until next time, stay cracked, stay curious, and I'll see you in the next one.